Hi, we're Mike and Alicia Hernon of the Messy Family Project. We have 10 kids, 5 grandchildren, and we love talking to parents about their role, the most important and sacred role of being parents, leading in our homes, right? But we're honored to be a part of this project, partnering with Shalom World on this series, Family.
By the sea, anywhere we wish to be. When we're loved, we're happy and free. Come together, we're all family. Time to shine a brighter light in our world. Together, we're all family. Come together, we're all family.
Today, we're going to talk about the importance of attachment. When our children are very, very young, when they're infants, we can kind of think that they're really not capable of relationship, but not only they're capable of relationship, but the bond that you form with your infant, with your toddler, is the most important bonds that they will have for their entire lives. And parents need to be very intentional about the way they hold their baby, about the way they talk to their baby, about the way that they form that relationship, that attachment to them, because that helps your child to form better, healthy relationships for their entire lives.
So many studies point to the simple fact that your relationship with them breathes life into everything that they do, their academic growth. I mean, we've even seen studies where their physical growth of premature children depend heavily upon the way that dads play or moms interact or the connection that we have. God made us for each other.
Yes.
God made us to be a part of a community. And that first community we have is in the home. And that really is the sure fixed point in the home, is this relationship, their attachment they have to their parents gives them that kind of guiding light and that sure foundation for the rest of their lives. It's something that we start in the beginning, but it really is something we continue throughout their relationship in the home.
So let's hear from some other parents and hear some of their questions that they have about attachment with their children.
So one of the struggles with having so many kids is making sure I spend quality time with them. We do have date nights where my wife and I will bring out an individual one, but 8 children is a lot, and so there is a struggle that I have to make sure that I'm present there in the way that they need.
In a big family, attachment is important, but there's the challenge of how do you do that for sure? Because they each need their individual attention, but certain attentions or certain needs come up more predominantly at different times. And then did somebody fall to the background? Is this person feeling left out? Or by the wayside, because not that their needs aren't as important as the others at that time. So trying to really make sure there isn't a distraction when they come up to give that attention is something that I have to be really aware of, because I don't always do that well because you're tired.
So that's definitely been a challenge for me, trying to figure out how to be a dad to 6 different age groups at 6 different stages of life. Different personalities. Our 2 boys in the middle, 2 years apart, dramatically different personalities, especially when they were younger teens. And it was just really interesting trying to figure out how to raise them and try to be close to them, and how they felt loved was certainly a challenge, or it certainly still is a challenge.
So I think something that's important with me and dealing with attachment is growing up, my mom and dad both worked 2 to 3 jobs each, and so we didn't really see them, and I was with babysitters a lot, and I can see the impact that had on me and pushing me to be very independent. And now that I'm able to be at home full time with the kids, it's trying to figure out how can I love them best and ensure that they're both being loved and tended to as much as they need, while at the same time making sure that I can help Katie figure out, in her sense, what is like the parts that I see the kids really desiring her and not feeling like that she's not with them, because I know she works, but that's the important part right now, and as well just raising our kids.
Being attached to your kids is such an important thing. I think there's a struggle with parents to kind of be the authority and also be friendly and lovable, and kind of walking that balance can be tricky at times. I think always being emotionally available to your kids and forming that really strong attachment can be really tough as a parent, especially if you yourself are going through a tough season. You still, even though you're not feeling it, have to be emotionally available and attached and listening to the needs of your kids. And so balancing your own needs and their needs sometimes is really difficult for me as a mom.
So we just heard from some great questions, some challenges about dealing with this idea of attachment. And now we're going to get a chance to talk to Dr. Matthew Breuninger, a professor of psychology at Franciscan University. Matt, thanks for coming and joining us on the program today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So I think that this idea of attachment can be very misunderstood.
Absolutely.
Right? And so that's why I know that you, as a doctor of psychology, and you teach upcoming counselors and people who will be working in our world, I wanted to have you on to talk about let me just start out with this.
Sure.
What would be your definition of attachment? If someone comes to you and says, what is attachment? They're talking about the importance of attachment. What is that?
Yeah, perfect. So attachment is the socio-emotional bond between a child and a caregiver.
Okay.
It's a relational bond, so it's social, but it's emotional in the sense that it's about felt security. Mm-hmm. It's the social emotional bond between a parent and between a child and a caregiver. And so what you want with attachment is you want a child to experience and feel in their very being safe and secure.
Okay.
That's ultimately what attachment is about. It's about feeling safety to the depth of your being for the child.
And why is that so important?
Yeah.
Because it's the importance of attachment.
Yeah.
And I know that we oftentimes talk about the parent-child relationship.
Mm-hmm.
The child's relationship with the parent is the most important social relationship they have.
Absolutely.
Why is that so important?
So attachment does a couple things. So one of the first things attachment does is in the context of that safety, the child learns how to regulate their emotions. So like fundamentally, on one level, attachment is about emotion regulation. So you imagine little children, the part of their brain that controls ordering, sequences, inhibition, planning, all of that is radically underdeveloped. And so when a child has big feelings, infants through toddlers, when they have big feelings, attachment on some level is like, I come up alongside the child, I connect to them, and I lend them my prefrontal cortex.
Yes.
Right.
I lend them this part of the brain, which gives them the experience of being calmed, feeling safe, feeling secure, even with big feelings. Big feelings can feel dysregulating.
Yeah.
And so I connect
For the parent
to them,
too, just to be honest.
100%. No, 100%, absolutely,
tricky.
right? It's really tricky in that way. And I think it's important to, as parents, to understand our own attachment relationships.
Yes.
But it first and foremost helps the child learn to regulate their feelings.
That's a big deal.
We parents,
Big deal.
Because as adults, I have to regulate my own emotions.
Absolutely.
If I have a child, we ought to regulate our emotions, right? But a child, we need to, like you said, lend them our brain and help them regulate their own emotions.
And I think sometimes as children move into the toddler years, oftentimes parents will sort of maybe mistakenly or even unconsciously assume that children should sort of know how to do this. Just stop doing it.
When are you going to grow up?
Stop. Just stop crying. Stop being afraid.
Stop acting like a kid.
Exactly. Instead of realizing that my job is over and over and over to lend them the rational part of my brain to help bring order and reason and calm to these big feelings. And if I do that enough, if I do that consistently, right, to the best of my ability consistently, that child's brain will form and develop in a way that allows them to internalize that emotional regulation.
Right.
And then you have mature, healthy, emotionally regulated, right, young adults. Individuals, right.
And without that, they really can't operate. They can't socially interact.
Absolutely.
They can't
Absolutely.
so many things. And then all their future relationships and everything else is kind of built on that.
So if you look at the literature suggests that individuals with insecure attachments are at higher risk for depression, anxiety, behavioral disorders.
Okay.
It has really long-lasting, potentially negative consequences.
Right.
But here's the other thing it does. Not only does it help with emotional regulation, but in the context of a secure attachment, the child learns that it's okay to take risks. It's okay to have big feelings.
Yes.
It's okay to explore like what it is to be a human. And so, and if that holding environment, sometimes you'll hear it talked about as a holding environment. And that's sort of a beautiful image in that you imagine I put my arms out. And the idea is my kid, my child, can exist in this environment and realize that my parents can hold me, all of me, my big feelings, my fears, my thoughts, my concerns, my worries, and they're not afraid of them. They're not troubled by them. They're not destroyed by them. They're bigger than them.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the fact that they can hold these big feelings I'm having gives me a sense of safety and security.
Right.
That's right.
And so it's okay to mess up. It's okay to get really angry. It's okay.
Yeah.
I know that I'm going to be okay because I look at them
Yeah.
and I feel safe and secure.
Yeah.
Because typically when we think about attachment, you might say developmentally the first 3 years of life are crucial.
Okay.
The first 3 years of life are crucial.
We don't always think about it that way as parents.
That's
but
right.
It really is.
That's right. The first 3 years are crucial. Now, you really, starting as early as you can, you want to be trying to offer, and I can talk about some of the ways that you form a secure attachment, but
Right, yes.
you want to start, the day you bring your child home, right?
Yeah.
Engaging in the behaviors that will help assist form a secure attachment. But you start to see attachment behaviors from the child emerge somewhere around 10, 11 months,
Okay.
right? But then through that first 3 years, the brain is developing the reason the first 3 years are so important is the brain is developing so rapidly.
Right.
Those neural connections are being established.
One of the reasons those first 3 years of life are so important, and I remember reading this somewhere, is that the human person is the one mammal that is born actually not fully developed. Like our brains are not our brains are not fully developed.
100%.
So, and I know that that's like in talking about the development of the brain and those connections. It's amazing that
Absolutely.
we have so much that still has to happen after we're born.
I know. So this really speaks to the importance of the attachment bond. So commonly when you think about the brain, one of the mantras is the parts that fire together, wire together. Fire together, wire together. And so what you want to create in a healthy, mature brain is integration.
Yes.
Right? You want these parts, the order.
To talk to each other.
To talk to each
Yeah.
other.
Right. Yeah,
And so you want the emotional part of the brain to be in deep connection with the rational part of the brain.
That's right.
And one of the ways you begin to foster that in young kids is by creating an environment of safety and regulation and order. And the emotional bond of attachment does that. It gives a safety for the brain to develop so that the parts that are firing not in a dysregulated manner.
Right.
They're not hyperactive. They're firing in a way where they're being integrated with the rational part of the brain because the parent's offering that.
Yeah.
It's so amazing.
important.
It's like, it's absolutely,
I was blown away
fascinating.
when I remember reading this, that in that 0 to 3 age, mom particularly has this unique place. Both parents do, for sure. But there's this where the mom's emotions are basically regulating for the kid, right?
100%,
Isn't that?
100%. They do these amazing experiments. One of them is called the still face experiment. And they'll take a baby and the mother, and what you see is this beautiful dance between child and mom, where mom's responding to the needs of the child. There's joint attention. She's looking where the child's pointing. And then they tell the mother, give no feedback. Make your face perfectly still. Do not respond to your child.
Right.
And what you see almost immediately is the child notices that mom's not engaging or responding.
Yes.
And the child becomes dysregulated. The child will start screaming, crying. The child eventually falls apart.
Wow.
Because there's this beautiful dance of regulation, of attunement. And that goes into some of the marks of attachment.
Yes.
Being attuned to a child is so important. But one thing I sort of failed to mention is that 0 to 3 is so important. But what it gives you is something called an internal working model. This is the language, an internal working model. And that's a template or a pattern for how close relationships work. So you either learn that it's okay to be me, it's okay to have big feelings, it's okay to have needs, and the world is generally safe and people in the world will meet my needs, or you learn that people are inconsistent, I can't have big feelings, it's not okay to have my needs met, the world's unsafe. And you tend to carry that internal working model or template with you into childhood, into young adulthood. And so it's not, I want to give hope too, because those 0 to 3 years are so crucial, but these internal working models can be changed. If you had
they can be rewired.
Yeah, you can be rewired. If you had an insecure attachment growing up, you can regain a secure attachment.
Right.
It takes time. It's not, it's not
It's
an
easier to
overnight
learn
thing.
a language when you're younger, and so
Exactly.
it's kind of like that, right?
Exactly.
But you can learn it
But
when
you
you're
can
older.
learn it, yeah.
Okay.
it's not
So I
hard.
think a lot of moms right now
Yes.
are thinking, all right, this is really
How do I
important.
do it?
How do I do it?
How do I do it?
He never
Yeah.
writes at it. So
Okay.
you kind of touched on how to form a secure attachment when
Yes.
you mentioned attunement,
Yes.
right? And noticing your child.
Yeah.
What are some other
Okay.
things
Yeah.
that
So begin with
moms
that.
The
and
three
dads-
ways, the 3 ways are attunement. So you want attuned, empathic, and consistent care.
Okay.
Attuned,
For moms
empathic,
or
and-
dads.
For moms or dads.
Right.
Yes.
So what is attunement? Attunement is learning to see the genuine need of the child. It's to be zeroed in and to see what your child actually needs.
Noticing.
Noticing. And it's really easy to get this wrong, right? Infants, sometimes when an infant cries, they're tired.
Right.
Sometimes they're hungry.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're scared.
Right.
So we need to take in more of their environment, see from their eyes.
We need to see from their eyes, what does this child need? And so that's the first step. The second thing is empathic or warm care. So it's one thing to see what you need. Okay, my child needs to be held and rocked.
Right.
You can hold a child and rock them like, hey, it's okay, I love you. Or shh, shh, come on, shh.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Just be quiet.
Just be
stop
quiet.
leaving me alone.
Yeah.
Right? So I
Chop,
am
chop.
holding
Come on,
you,
let's go.
but right, I can hold in a cold and distant way. I can hold in an angry and
Yes.
sort of scary, frustrated
And
way.
kids pick up on this.
They pick, just like Michael said, they notice the emotional environment. They feel it.
Yeah.
They feel it.
They
So-
can't even necessarily rationally understand it, but they're just they're picking
They're
up.
intuiting it, and it is shaping. I mean, imagine the brain is developing in an environment, and the environment that a child's brain is developing in is the relationship between the child and the caregiver.
Yeah.
It's a world. Like your relationship is a world, and that world can either feel safe and secure and predictable, and then the brain gets to develop in that environment, or it can feel unpredictable, cold, distant, scary.
Right.
And then the brain is wiring and firing in that environment. And so you want it to be warm.
Right.
Even when I'm correcting, even with older children, when I'm correcting my kids,
That's a
I
big
can
deal.
correct my kids in a way that doesn't convey, I'm withdrawing my love until you act the way I want you to act.
Right.
Yeah.
I can correct them in a way that keeps our bond intact.
Yes.
That's huge.
And it's huge. It's hard.
Right.
But it's huge.
We talk about sometimes correcting, especially those teenagers when we get almost like triggered by our teenager's action. Kind of think about like you're a state trooper or a policeman.
Yes.
Like
That's
they
right.
don't
You're
pull you
delivering
over
this.
and start freaking out at
Yes.
you or yelling
I can't
at
believe you didn't clean up.
Exactly.
They just say, hey, license and registration,
Exactly.
here's the consequences. I want
Exactly.
you to be safe.
Exactly.
That's the way we need to approach our kids like that because they don't need our emotions. They don't need our sarcasm. They don't need our negativity.
It doesn't help.
It
doesn't help.
really doesn't because they're going to make mistakes.
100%.
And so that empathetic
That warm-
response is important, not just when they're infants, but all the way through.
I can convey to my child, like, I understand why you would hit your sibling. I get it. I
sure
know
you're
why you'd be so
frustrated.
frustrated. Now there's going to be a consequence, or something has to, or you have to amend it in some way.
Right.
Give guidance.
But I get that. I get it, and I want to communicate to him that I get it. I love you, but that's not the behavior we engage in.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's the second. So I can see what you need and not respond warmly. But what we want is attuned, warm, or empathic, and then consistent care. One of the things that human beings thrive on is consistency. And when the world feels unpredictable, it can feel unsafe and really anxiety provoking.
That's right.
So for little children to know when I cry, right? And again, it's at the emotional level. It's felt.
Yes.
When I cry, mom comes. When I cry, dad comes.
Okay.
When I cry, they meet me with a gentle voice, a calm voice.
That matters.
For it to be consistent, when it's inconsistent, what oftentimes emerges is something called an anxious attachment. And so you have a child who wants to be close to their caregiver, but then is afraid that what if it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? Who's going to show up?
Yeah.
That's true.
Is warm
Sure.
dad going to show up?
Yeah.
Right.
Or is angry dad going to show up?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
mom who's gentle and loving it, or is mom who's cold and distant and just stop?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
Yes.
it causes this anxiety, which is the child wants to be near you, but then when they're near you,
They're like, there's something, there's a hesitation in
there's
there,
a
right? There's a
hesitation.
check.
So they'll call it sometimes anxious avoidant attachment or ambivalent attachment.
There's lots of different types of families out there right now, right? Some moms are stay at home.
Yes.
Some moms work. Some
Yes.
moms are at home, but they have a side hustle.
Yes.
You know, like,
Yes.
and same with dads.
Yeah.
So when you talk about consistency, I think about those moms who are like, I'm not consistently there for my child. So
Yeah, sorry. So it's not it's not always about it's not necessarily about the quantity.
Okay.
Right? Not when I say consistency, I don't mean necessarily a large number, but I mean like the quality. So when you are present, are you present in a particular way?
Okay.
Gotcha.
If a mom works, fine. When she comes home, when she's home, is she consistently warm, attuned, empathic? So it's not just about being present all the time.
it's not the quantity
It's not the quantity,
necessarily.
it's the
Right.
quality of the
Interesting.
bond. Does your child feel safety?
Yeah,
There's
and I
no
think about this too. We talked about all these other kind of human and earthly things,
Yeah.
but it's also the whole foundation for their relationship with God.
100%.
Right? You know, so them being secure in your relationship as your son or daughter
100%.
gives them that kind of security that they can be the son and daughter of God, right? It's that bridge that we're creating, right?
So that internal working model I talked about, that pattern or template for how we engage in close relationships, not only does your attachment style predict what your marriage is going to look like the romantic partnerships will look like, but it also predicts how you tend to relate to God. So if you tend to have an anxious attachment to your caregivers, you're likely to have an anxious attachment to God. If you have an avoidant attachment to your caregivers, you're likely to have an avoidant attachment to God as well.
Yeah, really, for the key to good parenting is working on your own self, your own junk, if you will, and really refining, getting healing, and being transformed.
Absolutely.
But we've talked about this a number of times in the series, is that really what a big part of us as parents is helping confer identity on our kids. They're first our son and daughter, but through this process, right, of attachment, we're saying, you're my beloved son or daughter.
Dude, the first place a child experiences being non-sexually desired. We're made to feel desired, like to be wanted.
Yes.
And the first place a child experiences like non-sexual desire is in the context of the family.
Do we
Yes.
delight in them?
Yeah,
So,
I want you.
Yeah.
I want you with me. I yearn for you.
Yes.
And in the context of that holding environment, if I'm big enough to hold all that my child is, that means they have a space to explore what it means to be them.
Right.
And sometimes they're going to get it wrong, or they're going to try things, but they have a space to actually step into their identity as beloved son or daughter.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Breuninger,
You're welcome.
Matt, for coming on with us. We covered so much today. We're going to summarize this in a quick few points. Just hold on a minute. So I hope you enjoyed that interview with Dr. Matthew Breuninger about attachment. And I think it is very important that we realize what attachment is and what it is not. So a child's attachment to his parents, if you remember what Dr. Breuninger said, is that it is a foundational social psychological connection which lays the foundation for all other future relationships.
And that's why it's so key for us to understand what attachment is and how to implement it in our home. That connection that is fostered by parents is in the three ways that Dr. Breuninger talked about: attunement, empathetic response, and a consistent response. So again, these are ideas for you to be able to implement. So first, be attuned to your child's emotions. See them, recognize them, get behind the eyes of your child, see what they're feeling, be aware enough to know what's happening. Because I think too many parents, we're so busy, we're so shuttling. We've got to be attuned to what's going on. I got to have a radar out. How are our kids feeling? Being attuned is the first part of attachment.
And second, respond to your child's emotion with empathy. A lot of times we get unregulated. We get upset at our child's emotion, and that is not what our child needs. What our child needs is for us to be calm, because what we are doing, we are helping them regulate their emotions. So a response that says, I understand that you're frustrated, or I understand that you're angry right now, or yes, that is really difficult. I'm so sorry that this happened to you. And that's what your child needs from you when they come at you with those strong emotions.
And the third and final point is be consistent in your response. They shouldn't wonder if they're going to get the mad mommy or the good mommy, the good cop or the bad cop. Right? As parents, we need to kind of be that state trooper in a good way, that we're coming at them with objective, with love, with compassion and understanding, but all the time that consistent response, as close as we can, because the quality of our interactions is far more important than simply the quantity. Now, we want both. You want quality or quantity? You want both. But when we look at this, we need a quality, consistent response to our kids. This will help them in our attachment and dealing with their own emotions as well. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's episode on attachment. This really is an important topic for us as parents to talk about, how we relate with our kids, how we create that strong bond, because it has an important part of their entire life, their academic life, their emotional life, even their spiritual life. So take time as a spouses to really talk more deeply about how you can incorporate this and make this more part of your family life.
And you're going to want to stay with us for our next episode of Family on Shalom World, where we're going to talk about parenting as a team, which is one of the most important things you can do for your children is to have unity with your spouse. So please stay with us for our next episode.
And until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you.
Are you searching for purpose of life? Discover your true identity. Stay tuned to Shalom World.